gonna watch it. I think Theo Von should be here. Theo Von's one of the greatest comedians, I think, to come out of the newer generation of comics. But that's just my opinion, you know. Um, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and get over into this. Okay. Let me get this set up. All right.
A new year and a new adventure with the perfect Chevy to take you anywhere. With pure power unleashed.
Ever met.
You're one of the funniest guys in the country. I really think.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. This gentleman had half a limb, or he said he was. So he could have been faking it.
CGI or something?
I don't know what his name was.
Your thing is going really great. My son's a big fan of yours, Baron.
Really, Baron is?
Yeah.
I think I needed everybody in the world to love me just because I wanted to get my mother to love me. It's like I just figured eventually it will get back to her.
Louisiana, 1980. Theo Von is born into an unusual household.
My father was real old when I was born. You guys know that. My dad was born in 1910. My dad was 70 when I was born. My dad was 70 when I was born, right? So he was an old man. So by the time I got to know him, like when I'm 7 or 8 years old, he's 77, 78. And it was just weird because my dad didn't have any money. Like I could understand a woman making love to an older man who has, is affluent.
Yeah.
You know?
But she just couldn't find
who's
anybody.
going to make love to an old man who has no money? My dad would just sleep all the time and his eyes would start leaking. My dad was always just resting everywhere. His friends would come over and they would rest. We'd come home and my mom would, she'd be like, you need to go spend time with your dad. I'm like, why? She'd be like, because he's gonna die. And we'd be like, well, fine then. I hope he does die.
Wait, so how old was he when he passed?
He was 86.
86. Well, you were 16.
But I've also always been a little bit angry at him. I didn't realize it. I was always angry because I didn't know him very well. You know, I was 16 when he passed away and he was...
I don't know, man. When I was 16, that probably would have ripped me in half. I mean, just last year, my father passed away, and I mean, it's like it hits you like it's crazy. Especially, I don't even know. Like I said, at 16, it was like one of those things where I'm like, I like super loved my dad, and I just never wanted it to change or to be something different, you know. I always was just kind of floating and holding on to the fact that he was holding on to the fact that he was a little bit older as the thing, you know, that you never realize. And then also you never realize like condition, like, you know, you might personally think in your head like, oh, you know, I can handle it, but you know, some people just can't. Some people can't. But let's go ahead and
86. You know, I was angry because I didn't know him, because he didn't know me. You know, I remember we would walk to church sometimes, and I would, you know, I'd make sure that the leaves were off of the sidewalk, and I would make sure that my dad knew how the sidewalk was so that we could walk together, you know. But I remember his skin on his hands was so old that sometimes it would make me kind of sad sometimes, you know, when he touched me because he wasn't the way that I wanted him to be. You know, your dad comes to show and tell, and he's like, I was born in 1910, you know, that's a weird time for the class.
Yes.
I really judged him. You know, I really judged him for being so old. You know, other kids would make fun of him, and then I kind of made fun of him. I was ashamed of my dad a lot, I think because of his age, and so I think for a while I had some issues with that. You notice how I would kind of like, I would introduce him to people as my grandfather. There's little things that it's like, you know, I start to think, well, I wonder how that affected him, or I don't know. I would make the excuse, well, he shouldn't have had a kid when he was that old, you know? What was he thinking? Well, that's true. But if he doesn't have that, I don't exist. There's validity there to that argument, but he gave me my existence, however way it happened. You know, he really gave me the most important gift, which is my experience of the world. I think maybe I was afraid to get to know him because I knew he was going to pass away. So it was probably like safer to not get to know him, you know? I think I could have been a better son to him, you know? And I know the circumstances weren't ideal, but I just maybe could have been a better son to him sometimes, you know? You know, I wish somebody had taught me to have more pride in my family when I was young, because I didn't know.
As a teenager, Theo was now left with only his mother, and unfortunately, his troubles were far from over.
I've always had like a lot of anger against my mother. I didn't really know my dad that good, so my mother's the only parent left. I get angry sometimes because she missed out on me. That's what I feel like.
Yeah.
Like she missed out on like whoever I was or whatever was unique about me or not unique or whatever my feelings were. Like she missed out on all of it. Always had a tough time hearing my mother. You know, I felt like I wanted my mom to laugh or something when I was young and I couldn't get her to laugh.
Yeah.
Because I remember my dad laughing all the time. And then I don't remember my mother having that at all. And I think there was always like this stress that she was stressed and I couldn't do anything. She was just stressed out, I think. And my sister was sick her whole life. She was born with a liver deficiency and she ended up getting a liver transplant. So most of my mom's affection really went towards her, you know, I think. Yeah. And my dad's too, really. So there was never a chance for anybody even to listen or to be heard. There was never even any piece of space to think or to feel. There was no space for that. My mom didn't speak to me in a way that was loving first, that let me know I could be loved, and instead there was this other tone that made me unsure how I was felt towards. You know, sometimes I felt so hurt as a kid. I hold on to that hurt because sometimes it's the only relationship I had with my mother was that I was angry at her. Like my mom never like looked at me very much, or she just worked all she was gone, and my dad wasn't around. So
That's just crazy, man. I mean, I understand it to a degree, especially with his dad being as old as he was. Like, I think that his mom kind of resented having him. Like, I don't think he actually.
Yeah, I think I felt like nobody ever saw me. Like nobody that I care about or anything even knows who I am. You know?
Yeah.
Like I would give anything. I think as a child, I'd give anything for somebody to just look at me.
You go to high school.
Went to high school, and then I got emancipated when I was 14. I just had a tough time growing up with my mom, and she was just hectic. Mom
What do you mean
delivered.
emancipated? Like you're on your own?
I mean, I
Yeah.
know some
And then where did you
people-
go?
And then I went to live with friends. I would take a backpack to school every day, and I would stay with whoever let me stay, man. And then I got a family that let me come stay with them for literally about 3 or 4 years.
With no clear direction in life, Theo went on to attend university, and it was there where he stumbled upon a life-changing opportunity.
Today's a different kind of day for Theo.
My father died a couple years ago.
Sorry to hear that. At the age of 14, my mother emancipated me, like legally emancipated me. It's gonna be hard on me in the future, I think, because I don't really know how to care about somebody.
So I was on a show called Road Rules, right? It was like a reality television show. Do you remember a show like
kind of remember that.
people playing games and stuff? And they used to have a show called Real World.
At the time, Road Rules was an extremely popular TV show that featured a group of strangers living together in an RV while facing various challenges along the way.
Each year, MTV or Bunham Murray Productions had auditions at different campuses around the country. They picked 6 campuses. I was just walking across campus at college, and I was just like really, really depressed, and they had like auditions. I was walking across campus, and they had auditions for Real World and Road Rules, and I loved the shows, and I went in. And I think I'd had a wealth of stories growing up to tell them when I went into audition that were like, this guy would be a good candidate. And then one day they called and said, hey, do you want to go on Road Rules? Do you want to go on this trip?
Yeah.
And it was crazy because at the time, so many people watched the show.
Right.
MTV
It
was
huge.
only, MTV was huge.
Huge back then.
And MTV was at its height. Like the show got like 14 million views, watches a week. It was our YouTube. It was everything all in one channel, you know. And I remember thinking, man, this is gonna be just a life change.
Yeah.
You know. I remember going to a basketball game that day and thinking, man, next year if I do that show, next year half these kids would know who I was.
Yeah.
When I came in here.
Landing a spot on one of the most popular TV shows at the time, Theo believed that this was his big break. However, little did he know, things wouldn't quite turn out as expected.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went into the show and went back to LSU, and it was a nightmare.
Oh, really?
People were so mean. People would throw shit at me all the time.
Holy shit.
Make fun of me, call me all kind of names. Back in Louisiana, people would like try to fight me at bars, and guys would like, I remember people throwing bottles at me, and like it just got crazy. One time I was at a bar, I was waiting to go into a bar, and some kid threw a bottle, and it whizzed right by my head and shattered on this bar right next to me.
Out of jealousy, right? Probably.
I guess.
They get drunk. Fuck this guy.
Yeah.
He's on TV, and
they call me the N-word too, and I'm like, what? You know? Like, I mean, I'm Polish Nicaraguan.
yeah.
You know? Yeah.
To Theo's surprise, being on Road Rules actually caused people to dislike him, as they saw him as just some kid with no talent. But you see, the feeling of being disliked wasn't unfamiliar to Theo.
I just always thought people just didn't like me. Ever since I was young, it just, something was wrong with me. I had this ism where I thought people just didn't like me, and there was nothing I could ever do in a moment to feel any different.
I didn't know anything about myself, how to feel good about myself, so the only way I knew to feel good was if I could make you like me. I only decided how I felt based on how you felt about me.
Theo really had two options. He could either let the hate and negativity define who he was, or he could prove every single doubter wrong.
I think that's why I needed laughter, because it was like, there's no way somebody could be laughing and hate me at the same time. There's no way they could be laughing and shaking and making this like joyous sound and not like me at the same time. So that's why I needed it. Because I'd been part of something that people were like, oh no, we don't like this.
Right.
I wanted to say, okay, well.
Didn't even have a chance or I was making really any choices in my life. I was 19, and then now you guys are gonna say, oh, this guy isn't talented, or this guy couldn't be an entertainer.
And people were like, these kids don't have any talent. So I was like, oh, I don't have any talent? I was like, I'm gonna take the hardest job you have, which you say is stand-up comedy, and I'm gonna fucking do that.
No way.
If something in the world isn't gonna see me, then I'm gonna take the hardest thing the world has, supposedly, which is stand-up comedy, and I'm gonna fucking make you see me. I think I needed everybody in the world to love me just because I wanted to get my mother to love me. It's like, I just figured eventually it will get back to her. I was in control over what you thought of me. Right. And it was totally up to me. And that finally seemed fair to me. Right. Because I think that life didn't honestly seem that fair before that to me.
And that's when you moved to LA?
I think that's when I moved to LA. Yeah.
He was on NBC's Last Comic Standing, and now he's traveling nationwide performing his stand-up comedy. Please welcome the very funny Theo Von.
What if your gym membership costs less than your daily coffee? Join Co-op Fitness for just $1 down and
Got a pretty crazy life, man. My father was 70 years old when I was born, 7-0. Basically make me a product of loose skin and loose morals, if you look at it like that.
We'll play games like catch or don't. And my favorite game is Dad sleeping or is he no longer with us? Yeah.
My dad was a unique character. My dad was 70 when I was born. Everybody knows that. So like, it gave me a lot of like cute kind of little jokes that were safe, that were pretty clean.
I had like such a piece of material
that I could tell about my dad.
So it was like, I knew I could get a couple laughs.
Did that kind of start your sense of humor?
Yeah.
And joking about your father? I mean, I know that's morbid,
Yes.
but kind of trying to make jokes at that age about your father passing away?
100%. Yeah, I just had this kind of odd, dark sense of humor where anything was game to joke about. I feel really blessed. You know, it's funny because if my dad hadn't been so old and stuff, then I wouldn't have been, been around stories.
Theo's unique upbringing gave him the material he needed to jumpstart his comedy career. However, his path to success did not come without struggle.
Did you bomb it all in the beginning?
Yeah, I've definitely bombed a few times. Yeah, it was just sometimes it's a weird crowd. Sometimes everybody doesn't do well. They had a place around the corner, the Armadillo it was called, and they had a comedy night there once a week. They had a room in the back.
How are you making money when you're working at, I mean, this guy's, is he even paying you?
They call bringer shows, and you got to bring people with you. And if you don't bring like 5 people, and probably $10 to get in or something, then you have to pay the difference on the $50. I probably went about $30,000 in debt, You
did?
Yeah, just had credit card debt, which was a lot of debt when you never have had, $3,000 in a bank account.
So for all those years, are you paycheck to paycheck?
Yeah. If you do a feature weekend somewhere, you can get paid $600 for about 5 shows, but you have to buy your flight. So that takes $300. If you eat on 80, you spend everything you make on your flight. So,
man,
you go all the way there and you take your talent, but you're not really making any money.
With money running out and no clear path to success, Theo decided it was time to give up.
I gave up at that point. It was a point where I gave up.
Oh, you gave up on comedy at some point?
Yeah, I had this girl. I was in this long-term relationship, and I went back to New Orleans and worked at a bar, and we was selling Mexican food to people. And they had a margarita machine in there, and I was working that bad boy, and just doing what I could. And And some guy came in who worked next door, and he said like one thing to me, and it just set me off.
Like treated you like a chump or something?
It was like some rich dude, some rich, second-hand generation rich or third-hand generation rich.
He says something to you.
He said something, and that night I broke the margarita machine. I set that bitch on and broke it, and I knew that cost him probably about $600, and that was it, and I didn't go back there, man. And I couldn't commit to the relationship I was in, and I just went back to LA.
Theo was now all in on becoming a comedian, but despite his best efforts, he'd have to face a couple more obstacles before he'd reach his big break.
I did a Netflix special that didn't do anything. Did nothing, man. I was so excited. I remember I went to Chattanooga, I'm all fired up, and I'm thinking it's gonna be packed, man. And it wasn't even a big club, and there was 9 people in there. My first Netflix special did nothing for me, man.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. Like, I remember, I've told this story, but I went to Chattanooga to this show. This was my first weekend. I get there, nobody.
No way. And the special
tickets.
Just came out?
Yeah, like 20 tickets.
That's painful.
Oh, it's painful, bro. Here's the crazy thing about painful, man. When most of what you know in your life feels like painful, then I think shit like that just kind of fucking fits on the shit.
Despite having a disappointing Netflix special, Theo continued to improve his craft. And not long after, he found himself on Comedy Central.
I got 3,000. I remember they gave me 3,000. Did the Comedy Central like 10 minutes or something. But then also they had all the eyeballs then. They had the eyeballs. And so, so you got a little money, and then you start to get a little notoriety from the deal. From like you could show people, oh, I really am a comedian. That's the scariest part as a comedian. You could tell people you're a comedian, but it's a real weird thing to tell people until you have some proof that you are it, dude.
Theo was beginning to make a name for himself. Coincidentally, around the same time, a new form of media started gaining popularity.
One day I went on Joe Rogan's show, and on his we just talked more as a long talk, and I was like, oh, maybe I could just do it by myself. Walked out of Joe Rogan's one time, and I was like, oh, I want to do something more like this. I want to talk about just whatever I want to think about.
Yeah,
And that's what I started doing then. I always wanted to have my own voice, and so then I just started in my kitchen. And I say that a lot, but I literally took my kitchen to my dinner table and just made it where the studio was. And that became the studio. So then I have to eat in the living room and stuff, but it was still like...
That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Okay, this is on now. This past weekend, I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I flew back this morning to Los Angeles.
At the time, podcasting was slowly becoming more and more popular, with people like Joe Rogan showing the potential for success. But Theo didn't want to simply copy Joe Rogan's style. He wanted to create a viewing experience that was unique to him, and that's when he introduced the hotline.
What up, Mr. Theo? This is your boy, Travis.
Hey, Theo, this is Dylan Green.
Yo, Theo, what's up? It's your baby boy, Brian.
Hey, Theo, this is Alan calling from Washington State.
The special part about this past weekend wasn't just the fact that people were calling in, but it became a platform where people could openly share their deepest struggles.
Hey, what's up, Theo? My name's Miles. I was just kind of wondering on how you stay sober.
And I saw you were going through a hard patch now, and I was going through a hard patch, and I just kind of want to hear, what do you do to kind of see the brightness when you stand in the dark, man?
You're not alone, brother. I lost my big brother 3 years ago, and it gets easier. I know it's hard right now, and I miss that motherfucker every day.
Although Theo was known for making people laugh, it was through these conversations where people were able to see a relatable and genuine side to Theo.
Nothing changes if nothing changes, man. I just want to remind you, because I've spent a lot of time in my life sitting around wanting things to change and not being able to make them change and not thinking I could. And the reason you probably feel bad is because one of the reasons could be that you actually cared. And that's okay. What would I tell my 21-year-old self? I would say ask her out. No matter who she is, whether she's a job or a new city or a actual person. If I'm feeling bad, that doesn't mean I'm doing bad. That doesn't mean I am bad. That doesn't mean that I can't still take some action. Because nothing changes if nothing changes, man. And then people will share stuff with me that means something to them sometimes. Like, Some guy came up to me this morning at the cafe and said, hey man, I got 5 years sober, you know, and you're just so excited when you see how somebody's life gets different or better. And not that I have anything to do with that, I don't feel like I do, but just that he wants to share that with me and that he feels okay sharing it, you know.
You have a lot of influence. It's like it actually matters whether you have your life together. You're influencing a lot of people, and then they're influencing other people. So
it's teamwork. I mean, I noticed even just starting this podcast, right? I now show up for the podcast because the listeners show up for me. It's really fascinating. You know, it's like I'll come in at extra hours and do extra things because I want us to be a part of each other's lives.
Yeah.
With consistency, it was only a matter of time until Theo became a superstar.
We're live.
And we're back.
Yeah.
We're doing your podcast, though.
Yeah, thank you, man.
But your thing is going really great. My son's a big fan of yours, Baron.
Really, Baron is?
Yeah.
What's up, man?
What's up, man? Good to see good old Theo Von.
It's an honor,
The
man.
world loves you, you know?
But despite the money or the fame, what truly makes Theo special is he stayed true to himself.
You can't wait for everything to be perfect to start living your life. Somewhere a long time ago, I needed somebody and they didn't do it. And so I decided at that point, I guess,
I totally thought, guys, in my head that this was going to be like a bash video, but really this guy just like broke down some stuff that I think we already all knew.
I don't need you. The only person I need is me. Like my mom never like.
Theo Von is top A1, probably one of the best comedians for real. He's the shit. He's the shit and a half.
Like, looked at me very much, or she just worked all she was gone. And my dad wasn't around. So yeah, I think I felt like nobody ever saw me. Like nobody that I care about or anything even knows who I am, you know?
Yeah.
Like I would give anything, I think as a child, I'd give anything for somebody to just look at me, you know? Like, man, if somebody would have just sat and looked at me,
Yeah.
it's like, would I even have done this job? Sometimes I think about that.
I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd really appreciate it if you left a like and hit the subscribe button.
Yeah, well, that's basically another one, guys. I just wanted to go ahead and pump out another one. Please like, subscribe, comment, follow. Hit me one more time with it, you know. This is Willie P. This has been a reaction. He said Theo Von shouldn't be here, but in my opinion, I'm gonna name mine. You know, Theo Von should be here because really, I think there's a lot of people who have listened to Theo Von and like what he says and actually understand it from like a different perspective, other than like trying to get something out of it as far as like getting him to actually mess with you, you know? So, I mean, it is what it is, but I definitely feel like Theo Von should definitely be here. He deserves what the spot that he got. But okay, well, I'm gonna end this one, and you guys have a good night. I'm gonna start another one here in a second.